Anyway, I'm starting this session being the oldest culprit here. And I would like to invite, we have three heavyweights, by the way, heavyweights in menopause. So the first one, everybody knows, Mrs. Meeta. She is a consultant at the specialist menopause osteoporosis in Tanveer Hospital. She has an interest in obstetrics, of course, menopause, and also gynae ultrasonography. She has had many awards, editor Journal of Midlife Health for almost 3 years, and she is a founder, chair, research committee of IMS, and founder, patron of Hyderabad Menopause Society. I don't know if it describes her very well, but she is known in the menopause world very easily.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the kind words. A very good morning, everyone. And respected chairpersons, dear colleagues, first I would like to congratulate and thank the central team headed by Dr. Anita and Bhopal team headed by Dr. Shashi for the stupendous success of this conference. I think after a very, very long time, it's very heartening to see such a huge crowd. And when they said they're going to have 12 sessions, workshops, we were wondering how many delegates would be there, but it was such a pleasant surprise to see all the halls almost full at all the sessions. So a big round of applause for the Bhopal and the central team to have executed it so well. So today's session is primary prevention, hormone therapy, a little difficult topic to handle, but I believe in it, that there is a scope for primary prevention without the symptoms. So here it goes. We are missing out on some. Yeah, I think this is better. So I would like to thank Abbott for giving me an opportunity to, and they have sponsored this session. And the outline is MHT for primary prevention of osteoporosis, for primary prevention of GSM, and for quality of life, which we hardly talk about, the quality of life, which is so, so important. In the next few years, we are going to hear more and more about patient-related outcomes. So the quality of life is going to become much more important than only certain symptoms here and there. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Now, this is a very typical case. I'm sure you're going to see it very routinely in your practice. A 52-year-old, she had her menopause about 1.5 years ago. And she has mild symptoms, not really very symptomatic, not very severe symptoms, which you can manage even with the lifestyle management, because we are not going to jump for MHT for all the patients, isn't it? And then, but look at her family history. Her family history, her mother had a fracture at the age of 62, and her father had a myocardial infarction, and that too at 62. So for us, 62 is very young. I think most of us are around that age. So, but there is no personal medical history, but she's taken care of herself, and she's quite okay. But then she is a corporator, working in the corporate field. So she came with a list of investigations. And in those list of investigations, she was very worried because her lipids were, her LDL is 172 and her lipoprotein A is 86. So that's two big risk markers for cardiovascular disease. And behold, there her DEXA also started showing up, the genetic factors, and she had a little bit of this low bone mass. So she has a low bone mass, she has dyslipidemia, but then yes, she also came because she must have insisted that I would like my FSH. But do you think we should be doing the FSH 1.5 years after menopause for this lady? Not really necessary. But she, there are lots of times people come to you with the reports in hand. So this is one scenario, and this is another scenario. It just happened just before I traveled to this place. This 40-year-old, this is a real case, 40-year-old, she came to me saying she didn't have her periods for some time, about 8 months. Then we got the test done. So I think the FSH is very important apart from the prolactin and other things. And I would like, what's happening? So here, just concentrate on the blue areas. The HB1AC is 5.9, just about edging in. Just 5.7 is a cutoff, a little higher, not really high. And the lipids, you see, the LDL is also just edging up to 113, which is not really very abnormal. But she's just going through that menopause transition at POI. So these are two different situations which we are dealing with. Her medical history is absolutely all right. For her, there is no genetic issues, which is into a high risk category. So two case scenarios we have in mind, and then we are going to take it forward as to how we are going to go about. So when you see, the prevention thought is not new. So it's a pleasant surprise, when I was reading about the history. Do you know that the first estrogen formulation was Dr. Jignesh from your state, Gujarat? And there was a Ben pharmaceutical which produced from the cow's ovaries, the estrogen was produced. And that went on till the whites took over, and then it went off to the Western world. And so we were saved of, the women were saved of a lot of experiments, because all the experiments were done then, and we are now in a better position to really use it for our country. So that is how it started. And then, you know the entire history, the PEPI trial, which showed that there is the first, kind of good RCT, which didn't have the myocardial infarction outcomes, but it did show that it helped in the lipids, dyslipidemia. It also protected the endometrium, because unopposed estrogen by then was causing the problem. So like that, then the HERS came in, then the WHI came in. But in between, around 1992, the American College of Physicians announced that it's not only for symptoms, you can use it for primary prevention, use it for everybody like immunization. So that was a time when things started becoming bad. And then later on, we soon realized the WHI, so not going into too much of the history, but today we are back to whether the WHI, everything went for a toss. And then even for symptoms, we were scared to write. But today again, we are going back in a circle, wondering as to how and where we can do it. But we're in a better position because we have a lot of evidence. So we can be more careful in how we are prescribing this medication. We know that osteoporosis is really prevalent in our country. Osteomalacia, osteoporosis is there, and then fractures are there. For us, more than the hip fractures, I think the vertebral fractures happen earlier, and even the age of 40, 45. There was a beautiful study from Vellore which said that young women whose AMH was low, the vertebra fractures were happening between 40 and 50. Can you imagine? So this is the real ground reality. So there is a place, we know the pathophysiology of osteoporosis, it's lifestyle plus your estrogen. The estrogen and the genetics, there is a downfall. So we have to keep all this in mind. So when you look at all this, do you think in POI, and the 52-year-old, would you go for a bisphosphonate even if she has mild symptoms, or would you rather go for an estrogen therapy? So this becomes a primary indication, primary prevention. It is not secondary prevention. It is not prophylactic, like, the FDA puts it in a different kind of a format, but the real meaning is whether the woman is symptomatic or not symptomatic, if she has low bone mass and is a high risk for fracture. The therapy at 40 and 50, you're confining to the rules of the MHT prescription. The order would be, audience, MHT or bisphosphonates? Little louder. Absolutely. So it has to be MHT, and all the global guidelines today agree to it, which were not agreeable 10 years ago. So now you're much safer. It's not only the Indian Menopause Society which talked about it, but now everybody is saying, yes, you can give MHT for bone health. So that is what it is. So takeaway is good prevention. I'm going to just, go on to the GSM. Now, what is GSM? The problem with GSM is there is no universal diagnostic criteria. So that is the problem, the basic problem. But so we thought about this, and we, from the registry, we have presented a paper on the prevalence also. Asna is here; she was the lead author. So when we were, really dwelling into the details, how to diagnose it, what is the criteria? So then we came up, looking at the world literature, you should at least have 2 symptoms or 1 sign, and then have at least a vaginal pH which is less than 5, or the VMI, that is the index, should be less than 15. So that's the scoring. So that's how you diagnose it. Because unless you have a diagnostic criteria, how can there be a universal language to treat it? So there should be a criteria. And what we also realized that this is a chronic persistent disorder, just like your osteoporosis, cardiovascular. It's not like vasomotor which comes and then goes off. It is not like if you treat it once, that's done. You're not going to give a short course of treatment and the woman is going to be happy throughout her life. No, it is a continuous kind of a treatment that she needs. It's a persistent treatment. And vasomotor symptoms, that is a graph which happens. For vasomotor, it comes down and the GSM progresses. And this is what we also found. The prevalence rate is very high outside, 84%. And only 25% of them are treated, even in the European countries. So what about India? So this is what has come in the climacteric from the registry. And so the purple ones, what I have circulated, the progression, it shows how the GSM progresses to postmenopause, where the numbers increase, and it's almost like 70% in the postmenopause compared to about 50% in the early menopause. So this is our Indian data. So estrogen deficiency, all of you all know, definitely that is the cause. So I will not go into the details of this. Low dose, but the treatment is low dose vaginal therapy. There is no place for systemic therapy when the symptom is only GSM. But if it is osteoporosis, or if you're prescribing it for vasomotor symptoms, then that is going to help the vaginal health also. And you may or may not add estrogen therapy as the need base be. So be very clear, because there were some doubts raised yesterday. And even if you're above 60, now suddenly all the above 60 people are waking up for hormones. But be careful, please don't prescribe unnecessarily in that age group, even for GSM. For GSM, it's only local therapy. And we just have 2 combinations which you can give. So, and GSM goes beyond it, so don't think it's only the vaginal dryness, a little bit of difficulty in meeting, but it's also the little fissures which really trouble these women. The dryness, the vulval burning, repeated UTIs. And there are situations, the repeated UTIs in the older age group can get into septicemia. It can be that bad. So you should never be taking the GSM very flippantly. It has to be taken seriously, because it is a quality of life issue. And I tell you, the older women, bless you, when they get treated with a simple cream. They don't have to run around to the different, especially to the urologists. Of course, the urologists also become a little smarter. Now we are seeing the prescriptions of estrogens from them, far better than what it was once upon a time. And so the guidelines are, it is important. Now the take-home message for this is, it is progressive, chronic, and will not self-resolve. Proactive screening, no systemic therapy, local therapy, early intervention. Don't wait. Sometimes they may be asymptomatic and you're just seeing the vaginal pH which is higher. These are the situations we don't have any evidence whether to treat or not to treat. But probably you can warn them that if at all you develop the symptoms, please come back again. So that's the way to go about it. Quality of life, yes, you have all these problems which increases the problems, 75 to 90%. So Sudha, there's an excellent article by you people long way back affecting, there are only 2 articles, on quality of life. There is so much of research all of you can do. So one is Sudha and one is somebody else from Hyderabad. So we have only 2 articles out there. And so breast cancer, we are scared, but look at these graphs. So not going too much into the detail, less than 1, that is 0.8, isn't it? So the obesity and the daily alcohol intake are far, far higher in the risk category when you compare it with MHT. So MHT doesn't cause breast cancer. Please get that off your mind. What it does is, if somebody is in a high risk, it may accelerate that growth. And that is where your risk assessment and careful prescribing comes into play. So if you have done your risk assessment well, then you're not going to get into trouble with the breast cancer. And that is the message over here. CVD, the Abbott were not very, very comfortable, I think, in pushing it as a primary prevention, but I will deviate a little bit from there, because I strongly feel that woman who is in the high risk for a cardiovascular disease with a lipoprotein A high, with the LDL 170, you know what I tell my patients? Don't go to the cardiologist just now. You know, these corporators, they'll run to the cardiologist, take the statins and want to get them down. I said, just hold on, just give me three months, try the MHT for 3 months, try the lifestyle for 3 months. If your LDL doesn't come down, then you go for the statin. And it works. It works. Of course, I don't have evidence because I don't have enough of data on that, but it works. So, because that is the window of opportunity, even before the atheroma has set in, when you give the estrogens, it is acting on the receptors which are there on the vessel wall. But if your estrogen is acting on a plaque, which is there, the estrogen receptors are not there, and the plaque is going to get dislodged. And that is what happened in the HERS study, where in the first year, the episodes were much more compared to, like Jyoti said yesterday, nothing happened after the first year, even in HERS. So even in people who had myocardial infarction, they were benefited after the first year. But it was only the plaque which was dislodged. So hormones definitely have the most beneficial effect, which was seen throughout in the observational studies, seen in the HERS, seen in the KEEPS, seen in the ELITE, and we still think, and of course the WHO has proved it without doubt, that between 50 to 59, it is what that works. The take-home message is, it does improve the quality of life, because it improves your sleep, it improves the cognition, the brain fog, the happy hormones. And so, you know, I think all of us now know that MHT or anything that works. That was a beautiful talk by Beenal. I think she did a fantastic job on the CBT, and CBT should be one of the workshops for us every time, because that is the first line of management. So here, everything works at the upper level, at the hypothalamus, and from there, that hypothalamus is the master, organ, which is actually dictating everything. Your sympathetic, your parasympathetic, and all that is happening in your body at menopause and beyond is because of that. So timing is very critical before things go wrong. That is where you have to start your MHT. So the plan for Mrs. Sharma, how many for MHT, how many for the specific medications that people would like to give for the bone, start the bisphosphonates. Would you like to go for a bisphosphonate and a statin or an MHT? For MHT, please raise your hands. Neeraja, you're for MHT or bisphosphonates? Or you are an expert on lipids, so you should be for MHT. So thank you so much for that. And then, of course, this is the prescription. And then after I finish the prescription, I call the patient back. Don't go by my handwriting, it's really bad. And I still believe in writing rather than giving a printed report. I feel very nice when I write, even though it's a bad handwriting. So I called her back, I took a quick picture. I said, this is to go onto my slide. So you see, 30 years since the time of my practice, my first treatment was always lifestyle management. And it becomes, first it used to be lifestyle, then it is now therapeutic lifestyle management. Now it has got so many subheadings which I put some arrows. Earlier we didn't have that. The second is the calcium and vitamin D, which I'm very, very particular about. Then the third would be the Femiston. 2/10 at this age. I said at 40, I would start with a standard dose. I would not start with 1/10. And I think the prescription. And then, of course, never forget to ask her to maintain a menstrual calendar, because she may be having some bleeding, which is going to come back to you, or any other side effects, small side effects, any large side effects. You have to talk to them, counsel them, call them back for a follow-up. So thank you so much. I think I finished within time.